Hello and welcome to Defund the BBC. I'm Ted Jeffrey, and joining me this week is a journalist and teacher who has written extensively about matters relating to the transgender community as well as sex-based rights. I am, of course, talking about Debbie Hayton. Debbie, thank you for joining us.
You're very welcome, Ted. I'm glad to be here.
Now, Debbie, before we dive into the BBC, you seem to come under attack an awful lot from trans radical activists, despite being trans yourself. Now, for those of our viewers who aren't so familiar with the subject, could you explain why that is?
I think differently to many other trans people in that what it actually means to be trans. For me, trans is something that we do. Sometimes we change our bodies, sometimes we change our presentation in order for us to feel more comfortable with ourselves. But I don't think I'm the other sex. You know, I was born male and I'm still male and I'll always be male. And by expressing what I consider to be those truths, some people don't like it and attack me as a result.
Now, in the past, the BBC has told children as young as 9 years old that there are over 100 gender identities and that becoming transgender is a way to be happy, making no mention of medical interventions that some trans children undergo. Why are the BBC getting this aspect of sex education so wrong?
Well, they're picking up what has become received wisdom almost, that we have a gender identity and we must have a gender identity, and that's one of the fundamental parts of who we are, what makes us men and women. Somebody's told them this, but it's just not true. And we're seeing across society, not just in the BBC but elsewhere, we're seeing the problems which are resulting from it. It's a case where the BBC has been told something and they've picked it up uncritically without thinking about the ideas that they're taking on board.
Now, something I'm sure you might have heard of is the CBBC documentary I Am Leo, an extremely one-sided documentary which broadcasts the fact that, broadcasts doctors talking about how hormone blockers simply pause the body and do no harm. A claim which has been disputed with experts saying that they are life-altering. Do you think it's incredibly dangerous that the BBC are broadcasting content like this?
I think it's dangerous and highly irresponsible. To say that the puberty blockers don't cause any harm or merely pause development is there's no basis for making that judgment call. It's simply an idea, and until we get long-term results on the impact of these children, then I don't think the BBC is in a position to be making that call. I think it's harmful, I think it's irresponsible, and I don't think they should be doing it.
And is this a problem that we've seen at the BBC recently? Because has this ever been the case that the BBC has been broadcasting content like this before?
Well, the BBC has broadcast content. As you said, that there was the infamous clip about there being over 100 gender identities. And again, I would say, who told them this and why did they believe them? But there was also, they picked up a program produced in Australia. It was called First Day last summer, which just painted this totally one-sided and unrealistic picture of a child who identified as transgender. And the message which I fear was coming across to young people in the UK was, if you've got problems, if you don't quite fit in, if you've got some psychological distress, then identifying as transgender can be the answer to all your problems. Again, it's just totally irresponsible.
And of course, yeah, as you rightly mentioned, CBBC did broadcast this show First Day. For those of people who aren't aware, it's a film which essentially tells primary school viewers that if they are unhappy with their sex, then they can choose the other one. I mean, Debbie, what are some of the biological lies which are being peddled in this show?
Well, children are being told they can choose their sex when they can't. They're also being told, and this I think was deeply disingenuous. They're also being told that there's no consequence. You just basically choose. And the message to primary school children, prepubescent children, can be you can be a boy or a girl. You can choose that. But we all know that when puberty arrives, that it's much more difficult to pass as the opposite sex, because we all develop secondary sex characteristics. And when that happens, either it becomes much more difficult to pass, or you've got to take drugs, puberty blockers as they're called, in order to suppress those secondary sex characteristics. Now, that was not mentioned in the film at all. And what's worse was that the child actor, who was trans, who was playing this part, was actually on puberty blockers, but nothing was said about this. The message to children was, if you want to be the other sex, you can be. It's teaching young children that they can base their lives on fantasy. It's almost like the BBC saying that Santa Claus and the Tooth Fairy exist as long as you wish hard enough. Again, we shouldn't be teaching children this. There is a biological reality that children need to accept and understand.
Oh, see, it's also a case that, you know, children, because of CBBC, the demographic ranges from 6 years old to 12. I mean, you know, isn't the reality that they're just too young to be learning about stuff like this and being able to actually comprehend what they're watching?
Well, I think we should be teaching children that there's a diversity of humanity. You know, children may have trans parents, they may have gay or lesbian parents. So I don't think it's wrong to teach children that that people are different and there's a range here. But what we shouldn't be teaching children, and the BBC is doing, is that it is possible to choose your sex. If you're not happy with your sex, if you're a boy who doesn't want to be a boy, then you can be a girl, and vice versa. It's not true, but children who are, as you say, between 6 and 12, do believe these things. And I've been led to believe that it's true, especially when something such as the BBC is peddling this misinformation.
And obviously, it appears that every opportunity there is to kind of drench the British public in gender ideology propaganda, the BBC leap at the chance. I mean, recently the broadcaster had shoehorned a non-binary coming out story during the middle of the England versus Germany football game the other week. I mean, Debbie, do you think that constantly finding opportunities and avenues to publish gender-related stories actually does more harm than good?
Well, I would say, why do they need to do this? You know, again, you know, what is the agenda here? Why do we need to publish, you know, make a big issue of coming out as non-binary? The implication is that non-binary is some characteristic which we may or may not have, that we've totally had no idea about until about 5 years ago. Then suddenly this becomes one of the most important characteristics that somebody can have. Rather than saying that what the BBC should be doing is saying to children, if you don't want to conform to sexist stereotypes, then you shouldn't. So that girls should be allowed to cut their hair short. Boys should be able to wear dresses if they want to. Those things shouldn't be a problem. What we're doing is we're creating these new characteristics, such as non-binary, in order to form new constructs for children to be constrained within. And why the BBC feel that they need to do this is beyond my understanding.
Absolutely. A few weeks ago, the BBC's Pride group came out and said that they wanted to be involved with the editorial process of the Today programme on Radio 4, in particular to do with the transgender issues that were being broadcast on this news programme. I mean, is there not a real danger that, like we see with the CBBC documentary, which was extremely one-sided, that on a program like Radio 4, we could be seeing more one-sided transgender stories or LGBT-related stories?
Well, yes, one will question, what is the agenda of the BBC LGBT Pride group? I suspect they don't think the same way as me, and will they be consulting me? I suspect not. So what we see here is a political lobby group which is using transgender as a basis to exert influence over editorial policy. I can't imagine the BBC doing this for any other political lobby group to give them some sort of editorial input, or even listening to it, or even, I think, this hasn't actually happened, but even a political lobby group thinking that they could actually ask these questions.
No, that's absolutely right. But Debbie, thank you so much for giving up your time today to speak to Defund the BBC. It's been an absolute pleasure and an education.
Thank you. It's good to talk to you, Ted.